This week's episode of our show has been sponsored by the Grim Hollow Monster Grimoire, which is just launched on Kickstarter.
Our friends at Ghostfire Games are releasing this book packed with over 400 new monsters for 5th edition.
Kelly and I love dark fantasy, and this book is offering an amazing bestiary of horrific creatures, abominations, and undead monstrosities inspired by your favorite tales of grim, dark, dreary monster tales.
Not only that, but this book is going to contain rules for how to harvest monster parts and the crazy items that you can make with those parts.
Also, the book is going to be packed with tons of great advice for dungeon masters on how to make the most of these monsters in your adventures and encounters.
You can follow the links below to join in on the Kickstarter now. And now, on to this week's episode.
Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything Dungeons & Dragons, including advice for players and guides for dungeon masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today we are taking a look at 5 absolutely campaign-destroying magic items that you should be very careful about putting as treasure in your games of Dungeons & Dragons.
A lot of these magic items are fan favorites because players love to get them, but the implications that they can have on your campaign and adventure settings can actually dismantle a lot of the prep that you've done as a dungeon master.
These magic items can allow players to solve problems in ways that you never expected, and short-circuit many elements of your adventure design, or simply result in a total party kill.
These magic items are ones that you may consider giving to your party and might be great options for them. But there are a lot of elements that you need to take into account when you are looking at these specific items. There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling. Now, the first item on our list is the Winged Boots. This is an uncommon magic item that grants you a flying speed equal to your walking speed, and you can use that flying speed for 4 hours. Then they recharge 2 hours for every 12 hours that they are not in use. My main issue with this magic item is that flying is a really powerful ability to gain in Dungeons & Dragons, and I actually think this is a great magic item to award a player, but the fact that it is uncommon is concerning to me. Most of the time, low-level parties are gaining access to uncommon magic items, and I personally have seen what happens when you give a low-level ranger a pair of flying boots who also has sharpshooter and crossbow expert and is now flying 300 feet in the air sniping people. It's a problem that you now need to solve, and the problems and implications of this magic item are very interesting at low levels of play. I think that the adequate solution is that this should actually be a rare or very rare magic item, and then it feels more on point with the rest of the magic items you can gain that grant you flying. If you have castle walls or are building adventures that have obstacles that people need to get around, or enemies that don't necessarily excel at ranged combat, you now need to start changing and shifting things to adequately manage the fact that you have a flying sniper in the party.
Flying is a powerful and transformative movement mode. It changes far more than just what the characters are capable of doing in combat. And while the aforementioned example of a flying wizard hucking fireballs or a flying ranger sniping down all their enemies is an example of the most baseline problem, it now means that you as a dungeon master need to consider every single combat encounter and what that's going to look like now that you have a flying ranged character. And while that's not an impossible problem to solve, it does now mean that every single combat encounter you design has to factor that capability in. And at low levels of play, it's difficult to choose monsters from a roster that then challenge that character, that then also will not create an overwhelming situation for the other party members. And this is the issue with the Winged Boots, is that it's one magic item. If one character in the party can fly, they now have a star power. And they now can dominate combat encounters, and they can solve exploration scenarios because they just fly up and grab the magic item, rescue the cat out of the tree, fly over the city walls, and drop the rope down. It now means that every scene that can be solved with flight, that character gets to feel like the hero, and everyone else is left, well, I guess it doesn't matter what I can do. I can't contribute because I can't fly. And so that's the double whammy sort of issue with this ability, is that not only does it mean that every encounter and every scenario that you design has to be factored around it, it also means that one character is now hogging the spotlight because they have the flying speed and the other characters don't. The argument over when players should gain the ability to fly is a tricky one.
Mainly because Aarakocra exists, and that's also an issue that I have. Ancestry choices that allow you to fly at first level also have proven to be problematic for me, and I usually limit them and say that your wings don't come online until a later level.
And it's not an impossible problem to solve. It's just the constantly squeaking wheel. And that's why it's kind of campaign breaking, because it means that you can run into a scenario where, like, oh, I had this amazing adventure where the party has to climb up this tower and get to the top to rescue the prince, and they're going to fight through all these cool rooms as they go up the tower, or they can climb the external, and then the flying character's like, no, I just fly to the top. And your whole adventure, which was a cool idea, and it was a worthwhile adventure to play, but now your party doesn't get to play it because one character can just fly to the top and circumvent the whole thing. And so, was that a bad adventure? No, I don't think that was a bad adventure, because it was a worthy adventure and it was an interesting scenario. It was climbing to the top of a tower is a cool scenario, but it's just completely undone by the presence of a flying character.
Something that I've ran into personally is that we have a lot of great pre-written modules. As a dungeon master, I like to embellish the pre-written modules and add my own things into them. In my very first pre-written module that I ever ran, one of the things I decided to add in was additional magic items to give to the party to make them feel cooler and that were appropriate for what they were hoping to achieve with their characters. In this case, I gave Jill the winged boots and immediately learned what the problem was, because I was running a pre-written module. I now had to change every aspect of the pre-written module for all future adventures to add in enemies and change it. And as a first-time dungeon master who said, I might add a few extra magic items in, without realizing the implications of the magic items I chose, the winged boots proved to be the biggest problem and made me have to learn a lot more about DMing really quickly, because I couldn't rely on the pre-written content to adequately pose a challenge to this player anymore.
Let's enjoy like level 1 to 7-ish when flying is a little bit hard, so we can have those problems. Flight is something like you should earn it. Like, you should have to earn it, and giving out the winged boots at level 4 is too early. It's not earned. And yeah, Aarakocra are cool. I love them, but I do. And I would love to let a character play one, but I would generally want to start at a higher level of play before I did, because I like puzzles and problems that require the characters to think about space in interesting ways. And I lose the ability to create those puzzles when a character can simply fly and solve them instantaneously. And I want to hold on to that ability as a dungeon master for a little while before I give up the goose.
Next up on our list is the Helm of Teleportation. This is a rare magic item, a helm that you can put on, and now you have 3 uses of the teleportation spell per day. This is really powerful, and the implications of being able to teleport 3 times per day, keep in mind, there's a lot of different teleportation spells, and they work in a lot of various different ways, but the spell Teleportation is a 7th level spell that allows you to teleport, and as long as you know the location or have an idea of the location, there's a good chance you can go there. Not only that, but you can bring up to 8 other people with you, meaning that your entire party, and probably their friends as well, have a get out of jail free card or a get into jail free card, depending on the situation. This is a long rest in a magic item, because if you are in a dire situation in a place where it's really hard to take a long rest, well, no problem. You have 3 teleports, so you can teleport out, long rest, teleport back in, and you still got a spare one to get out again if you need to. So this is a really powerful magic item that I think, again, has its ranking too low. It shouldn't be rare. It should be very rare or legendary. A 7th level spell is something that you're only going to really be able to cast once most of the time as a spellcaster at higher levels of play. Giving a lower level character who's like 4 or 5 levels lower than the spellcaster who would gain access to the spell, now having 3 uses of this is insane.
It's actually related to the same problem as the winged boots, but now it's exaggerated because it's the entire party. It means that your party gets a really powerful problem-solving tool that allows them to both, as Kelly said, escape on demand or infiltrate pretty flawlessly. Because even though there's a chance for a teleportation mishap, that mishap is really meaningful when you can only cast teleport once per day. But when you can cast it 3 times per day, if the first one is a mishap, you just try again. And you get to re-roll the odds. And you've still got 1 use left over for when you need to get out of there. Again, the Helm of Teleportation is a rare magic item. So it's an item that is normally targeted towards characters between 5th and 10th level. These are those sorts of things of like where the characters need to deliver a message over a long distance or travel over a long distance. Those kind of stories and those plot lines go out the window as soon as characters have access to things like sending and teleport. Yeah. And with teleport, it's one of the cool things that 5th edition did was that it changed the 5th level teleport spell of 3rd edition into a 7th level spell and made teleportation circle the 5th level spell. And teleportation circle is controllable because it's 1 minute to cast, and the dungeon master gets to decide where the teleportation circles are that you can go to. But teleport is anywhere. And you can ward those areas against teleportation with Mordenkainen's Private Sanctum. But it doesn't change the fact that you can still now get out of those areas really easily with it. And it still gives the party kind of a lot of globe-trotting capability. Like, if you ask a party, would you like an airship or would you like a Helm of Teleportation?
The Helm of Teleportation is more reliable.
It's actually a better way of getting around. It's not as cool as an airship, but I'll take the Helm of Teleportation and a really cool castle. Now, I will say, I have designed adventures around the idea of the characters having reliable access to teleport. And once you get into high-level play, this is actually fine. Like, it's cool for the characters to be able to do that. This is not an ability that players should never have, because you can design the adventures in such a way that it's factored in and is still cool and meaningful. But you should give the Helm of Teleportation out to your party with the awareness that that's what it's going to do to your campaign. Because if you're not prepared for it and you're like, oh, Helm of Teleportation, that sounds cool, and then all of a sudden your entire plotline and story is just upended. Like, it's a lot harder to get to the Well of Dragons in the mountains when you can't just teleport there.
Yeah, I think that both of these first 2 magic items, we're not even saying that they're bad magic items to award. We just think that their rarity should be bumped up a rank.
Yeah, because again, the problems that these items cause are not insurmountable. But there's a period of time in a campaign where it's more interesting for the players to have to deal with these problems than have the instant win card that solves them. And you, as the Dungeon Master, not have to do the extra work of designing around these abilities. Eventually you can. Like, I've designed dungeons that could not be defeated unless the entire party could fly or teleport. Those were some of my most proud Dungeon Master creations. I built high-level dungeons where that was a core factor. It was like, you couldn't complete the dungeon unless you could fly. But that's something that feels more appropriate for high-level play, and not something that, like, level 6 or 7 characters are doing. So if you've ever wanted to send your campaign down a true black hole, maybe you should have your player characters find a Sphere of Annihilation and the associated Sphere of Annihilation control amulet. The Sphere of Annihilation is a well-loved D&D classic, and I think in 5th edition it's a little bit less terrifying than it used to be in prior editions, but it is still a black hole of utter darkness that obliterates any matter that touches it, except maybe artifacts and sometimes certain gods. In D&D 5e, there's a little bit of a generous statement in that a creature that isn't wholly engulfed by the Sphere of Annihilation only takes 4d10 force damage, but it's still a 2-foot wide diameter hole that obliterates all matter that you can control with your mind or a control amulet and move at a number of speed equal to your intelligence modifier and slam into people and annihilate them forever.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward magic item, and the game-breaking elements here are really just the fact that it's damn powerful.
I mean, it's a black hole. It's a moving black hole, and if your party can control it, you're going to have a bad time. Because it annihilates all matter. So you can just have it slowly devour a castle, break holes in the dungeon, destroy the BBEG. Anything you want to destroy with this thing, you can do it.
The fact that you even had to say some gods maybe can avoid it. I mean, if we're talking about gods, it should be a no, you can't kill a god with this thing. But you can. You can kill most problems. Most combat problems are solved by throwing a black hole at your enemies.
Yeah, like I mean, the simple ruling on this is like if you polymorph the big bad evil guy into a snail and then whip them, are they instantly destroyed or do they just take 40-10 force damage?
They're instantly destroyed.
Like they're wholly engulfed in the sphere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to make that sphere hit an entire target unless the target is really big.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the implications of this, I mean, giving your party a black hole, I don't really think we need to say more than that. You're giving your party
a black hole
that they can control and move around the battlefield and annihilate anything it touches. It is a really, really powerful magic item, and if you are going to give this to your party, I think the only way that I could see giving this to a party is if the end game content that I'm building up to needs to be destroyed by a black hole. If it is a plot device, it is a cool plot device to give your party. But if you're looking at this magic item saying, I wonder what would happen if I gave this to my party, the answer is nothing good for you as a DM who's trying to plan challenging scenarios for your party. You've given them a big old win button, and it's hard to deal with.
I mean, the only one that comes close to this as like an honorable mention is the Bag of Devouring. Right? Because the Bag of Devouring, by a similar token, like you can just chuck the snailified evil guy in the Bag of Devouring and they're gone forever. Or, you know, that problematic cursed magic item. Boo! That's one way to end your problems. Like, I've seen Spheres of Annihilation fixed in place and become immobile. And even when I've done that, the party has done things that I regret.
I mean, if you have a strong party member, you can just pick guys up and toss them into the...
No, I had a one campaign where I was like, this is going to be a really cool dungeon. I'm going to have this fixed Sphere of Annihilation in play. And then immediately my players were thinking of all the ways that like they could bring their prisoners back to the dungeon and like push their faces up against the black hole or like take magic items and bring them back there. It was like even them encountering the stationary Sphere of Annihilation turned into a campaign warping problem.
And that's the thing is a Sphere of Annihilation, even if you fix it in place, that immediately becomes a place that the characters are going to be interested in. There is a lot of implications on how to deal with problems simply by bringing them back to that place and throwing it into a black hole. There are so many times in my life that I wish I could throw my problems into a black hole, and, you know, giving your party that option is insane. Be careful what you wish for. The next items that we're looking at are actually 3 items that all grant wishes. This is the Luck Blade, the Ring of 3 Wishes, and if you're lucky, the Efreet Bottle.
It doesn't require too much explanation or creative thinking to realize that these 3 magic items all give your players wishes. And the Wish spell is a hugely impactful spell that if they get to 17th level and are a sorcerer or wizard, they might be able to cast that spell themselves and do very powerful and potentially game-breaking things with it. But putting these as a magic item and giving them to your party early on might be something you want to think about very carefully.
Yeah, and again, Wish is an element of the game that is very powerful. We love the Wish spell, and we love what it can do. But there's a reason why it's a 9th level spell. Giving it to your party a little bit earlier might be really cool, and in a key moment in the campaign where wishes are, again, a plot device, maybe the only way to undo some horrible things happening in the world is that they need to go searching for the Ring of 3 Wishes or the Efreet Bottle to grant them the wish to end the danger.
Oh, I mean, like let's not mince any words here. Simply copying the premise of Dragon Ball and saying you need to get the 7 magic MacGuffins so you can get 3 wishes is an awesome campaign premise. Like, just putting it on the table that your characters will complete this quest and get 3 wishes is amazing. And it's one of those reasons that I actually wish the Wish spell wasn't a spell, because if Wish wasn't a spell, then you could do plot lines like that, and the implications of it would be way more open-ended, right? Because then you could do like the crazy Dragon Ball plot lines, right?
It's also Legend of Zelda with the Triforce. It grants the wish of whoever combines the three pieces. So that's a great plot line.
And I actually find that plot line is actually underutilized in Dungeons & Dragons adventures, and I think it's because of the existence of these magic items. Like, for some reason, that wish is a spell that players can learn, and that these items exist, has made the fantasy of getting your wishes, it has made that like fantasy kind of redundant in a weird way. Like, we don't see it often in D&D because it's like, oh, a wish, well, I'll just get that when I'm 17th level. But it's actually kind of interesting that like maybe 10th to 15th level characters might be able to get that as their major objective for their campaign.
So again, this falls into the category of magic items that can be game-breaking if you're not paying attention to the implications of them. A lot of these magic items have great implications for building an adventure or a campaign, but shouldn't be handed out just as an idea for your players to mess around with. There's too much power in a wish.
Yes, however, there is a security blanket. The wish spell gives you, as the dungeon master, the authority to interpret the wish, and to simply rule that any wish that is beyond the power of the spell simply fails. And the interesting thing about the way Dungeons & Dragons works is, as the dungeon master, you get to decide how logic works in your campaign world. So there is actually no crazy legal wording that your players can come up with that could possibly force you to grant a wish that you wouldn't want to have happen in your campaign. You always have the ability to say, no, that wish just doesn't work. And you also get to decide what the forces that are interpreting that wish are, and what the rules of logic even are. So if you got like a cunning lawyer of a player that's going to come with a typed out wish that is like snickering, thinking that they've got you, no, because you're the one that writes the rules, not them.
As we move into our final magic item that can be potentially game-breaking, I think this is one of the most famous magic items that Dungeons & Dragons offers, and arguably the most game-breaking, and that is the Deck of Many Things.
I have tried using the Deck of Many Things in 3 campaigns, and it has destroyed every single one of them, except for the one that involved a time loop.
Yes.
And that was the only one where it was okay, but even then...
The only time that I think it is appropriate to give your players a Deck of Many Things is if you're doing a 1 or 2 shot adventure that focuses on the Deck of Many Things, again, as the plot device. I wouldn't even run a whole campaign about the Deck of Many Things. The fact is that the Deck of Many Things is stacked with cards that can be horribly detrimental or shift the dynamic of gameplay. We've had a character gain extra levels, now putting them above all the other characters. We also had a character have to go face to face with death, and that didn't go well for them. So there's a lot of implications within the Deck of Many Things that you're drawing at random, and if every player wants in, and we all did, because we've never gotten to draw from a Deck of Many Things before. Some of us drew 2 or 3 cards. And let me tell you, by the end of the Deck of Many Things, our party was scattered. There were people at various new levels of play with new abilities and features, and somebody was dead. So just by drawing from a deck of cards, it literally shattered the momentum of the campaign that we had going.
Yeah, and I feel... Okay, so there is an argument that goes, oh, well, you could fix the deck. You could rig the deck. Because there's cool, like, storytelling opportunities in the Deck of Many Things. Like, if your friend gets imprisoned, or, like, you get the enmity of an evil outsider, or all of a sudden you inherit a castle. I think that if you're going to cheat with the Deck of Many Things, part of the aura of the Deck of Many Things is, like, shuffling the deck of cards, laying them all in front of everybody, shuffling them again, giving them to every player around the table, having everybody shuffle that deck of cards so everybody sitting around the table knows this is the real deal. and every time, that was the end of the campaign. Again, except for the campaign where we were playing in a time loop, and the time loop overruled the Deck of Many Things.
Now, again, I think actually as we come to the end of this video, I think what's important here is even in this, talking about all these magic items, it's very clear that even the Deck of Many Things, if you are going to rig the deck, Again, what you're doing is not giving your party a magic item, you're creating a plot device.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of cases where the first two that we talked about, the Winged Boots and the Helm of Teleportation, should be given to later levels than they're represented. The last ones, the Sphere of Annihilation, the Deck of Many Things, and the Wishes, these are items that you need to consider more as plot devices, and you need to be very careful with how you're implementing them into your game. When we say game breaking, of course there's ways to use these magic items. Of course there's implications here for having these magic items be really standout features of your game. But if that's going to happen, you as a dungeon master need to read what the magic item does, analyze what it can potentially do, and use it in a way in your campaign that drives the plot forward. A lot of us dungeon masters like to look up cool magic items and say, hey, my party might like this. The magic items that we listed today are not ones that you should just throw at your party because you're interested to see what they'll do. You need to greatly consider what they can do.
Yeah, it's kind of bizarre because the Winged Boots are an uncommon item, and they're right there beside, like, the wind fan in the Dungeon Master's Guide. The Deck of Many Things is the legendary magic item, and it's also in the same rarity as +3 armor, which is good, but +3 armor isn't going to totally upend your entire campaign. I do feel that the Dungeon Master's Guide could have been better organized in showing the magic items that are good tools and buffs for the players, and the magic items that should be more considered as plot devices. And while it does do that to a certain extent by presenting certain items as artifacts, it doesn't do that with enough items. I actually don't understand why the Deck of Many Things and the Sphere of Annihilation, and the Luck Blade for that matter, aren't artifacts.
They feel like they should be artifacts, because artifact is that label that we give to a magic item saying this is more than a magic item, it's a plot device.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ones that we listed here today deserve that title, and I think could be listed as artifacts. Maybe, I don't know, give them a personality or something, and there you have it. They are now better equipped and better broadcast as what they could be. So this has been a look at 5 magic items that will break your game in Dungeons & Dragons. Tell us about magic items that had surprising consequences at your games in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube and elsewhere, please consider becoming a patron of our show by following the links in the description below.
We're making a book. Dungeons of Drakkenheim is coming to Kickstarter. We've partnered with Ghostfire Games to bring our campaign to life as a 5th edition module. You can head over to DRAKKENHEIM.com or follow the links below to join the mailing list to make sure you're up to date on all the news regarding the Kickstarter. And don't forget to check out our live play in the Worlds of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we have plenty more guides to the many magic items in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time
in the dungeon.